A very good afternoon and welcome to this session. We are going to be talking more about the decarbonization of Indian industries here today at this session organized at the FEED 2022 by Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy. This session has been powered by Danfoss, so my sincere gratitude and thank you to Danfoss for making this event and this particular session very successful. So we have a few representatives coming up. I'm going to quickly tell the attendees and the audience that for whatever questions you have for any panelist, please feel free and post these questions in the Q&A box that you see on the right side of your screen. So without much ado, I'm going to invite our first speaker amongst us. We have Mr. L. Nagahari Krishna, who will be moderating this session. He leads the Industry Affairs and Regional Hotspots business at Danfoss, India, a 100% subsidiary of Danfoss, Denmark. Prior to his corporate career, he served in the Indian Navy as a lieutenant commander. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. I'm also very quickly going to introduce our entire panel before we delve deep into the entire moderated session. So first, can I have Mr. Padu Padmanabhan, author First Fuel, India's Energy Efficiency Journey, and also the founder of AEEE. He has over 4 decades of experience in the design of national and regional energy efficiency programs, power sector reforms, regional energy integration, energy water nexus, clean energy, and energy access projects, including the planning and establishment of national and regional centers of excellence in energy efficiency. That's quite a lot of excellence coming in, sir. Thank you so much for being with us here. Next, may I have Mr. Raju Goyal joining in? He brings with him a very rich 30 years of experience in the cement industry. He's currently serving as the President and Chief Technical Officer at UltraTech Cement Limited. He has extensive experience in safety, technical, project management, manufacturing, energy management, alternate fuels, operational expenditure, due diligence, and product development. So it's a pleasure to have you, Raju sir. Next, I'm going to be inviting Mr. M. Ponnuswami. He's the founder and chairman and managing director of Pure Chemicals Group, one of the flagship groups in India, having a business venture abroad as well. He graduated in chemistry in the year 1974 from PSG Arts College. Welcome, sir. Last but not the least, I'd like to invite Mr. Kiran Ananth. He works as a principal counselor in Federation of Indian Industry CII. He leads CII's engagements in industrial and business energy efficiency, electrical utilities, SMEs, and climate change studies. He's also very, very deeply involved in CII's Green Entrepreneurship Council, which runs a cohort to provide business accreditation support to clean tech startups. So I'm sure our attendees are very excited. We have a very versatile and experienced panel with us here. I'm going to hand it over to you, Mr. Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. And thank you, panelists, for joining us on this important discussion on decarbonizing the Indian industries. Thank you, AEEE team, for allowing Danfoss to take this discussion on a very important topic. Can I ask the AEEE team to put up the slides? So, just for the audience to know how we want to take this up, first I will give you an overview of the reason we are having this discussion on decarbonization of Indian industries. And then we have these panelists whom you heard from our host as to that they are leaders in their own space in what they have done and how they have seen the industry going. We will hear from them on why they think that this is important and what is the roadmap that we can look at. Srishti, could you go to the first slide before this in terms of, yeah. So in terms of an overview, the subject that we are discussing today is on decarbonization of Indian industries. And while we have all heard from mean, we have just finished the budget speech, and we know for sure that there is a lot of growth that India as an economy is expecting. And we have also seen in the last 2 decades that India has done a lot of progress, both in terms of an economic growth as well as in terms of an energy, where today there is a larger population which has a much better energy access than what it was 2 decades before. While we are also the third largest incremental GDP growth that has seen in the world, in our own prime minister's words, we know that we want to be a 5 trillion economy very soon. Maybe not 2025, at least by 2026 or so, we want to be there, which means that there is a lot of growth that is expected in India, which also puts a lot of pressure on the energy footprint within the country. We know that India as a country, we don't consume much energy as compared to some of the developed nations like US or Europe. But with this development, we will also be consuming a lot of energy. What does this mean to Indian industries? And how can Indian industries enable India to grow in a sustainable manner? And that's the reason for us to take up this topic of how can we decarbonize Indian industries while meeting the aspirations of the Indian population. Can you go to the next slide, Srishti? In this slide, what you see is there are 5 points, and these 5 points largely, I mean, for people who have been following the COP26 and Prime Minister's speech there, these are very common points where the highlight of these 5 points was they talk about India reaching a net zero target by 2070. While that is a very very important point, but more importantly what we have to look at is the 4 points above, where especially point number 3 and 4 speak about India reducing its carbon emissions and reducing its carbon intensity by 2030, which in effect means that this decade is the decade of action. How can India work towards ensuring that in this decade we take the right steps, so that whatever it's not that a target by 2070 means that we start acting in 2050. What we do today is going to kind of help us move in that direction. And what does it take for us to go there? What is it that companies like Danfoss, companies, the other leading industries that are there can do? Can you move to the next slide, Srishti? And how can we collectively work towards it? So before I come to the discussion, when Danfoss is hosting this in terms of a strategy towards decarbonization, it's important that we also walk the talk. So what this slide broadly gives you is a strategy that Danfoss has put together recently, where we want to be carbon neutral by 2030. And we have already done a lot of work, because we have already reduced our carbon emissions by about 30% from 2007 levels. We have increased our energy productivity by 80%. But we still believe that there is a lot more work that can be done. And we are doing this because, one, it sends a strong message that we act on what we talk. The second more important part is that it is good for the business. And there is a lot more detailing on how we want to do it. There is a science-based targets that we are working on. And we also know that a lot of our clientele, a lot of our partners in this journey in India and abroad are doing the same thing. I mean, we have some of our friends even within this panel who are kind of sending a very strong message. But the discussion today is also to see what more needs to be done for us collectively as a country to move forward. Can you move to the next slide, Srishti? This slide basically talks about the fact that what Danfoss is saying is not just globally. All the pictures that you see there on this slide is what Danfoss is doing in India. I mean, the solar park that you see today, Danfoss has within this year for consistently for about 4 months, we were 100% on renewables. We have done a lot of work on energy storage. We also use all our food waste to generate energy, which we use within our canteen. So there is a lot of work companies like Danfoss are doing. There are a lot of leading companies within India that are doing the right kind of work. And we have seen from a ambition point of view, ambitious targets being set from the policy in terms of reducing carbon emissions or carbon intensity while having growth. We also see a lot of technologies coming to the forefront from a hydrogen point of view, energy storage, electrification, a lot of renewables in the energy mix, grid modernization, and all of this. Keeping these in mind, how can India look at decarbonizing Indian industries? And for this, with this as a background, I would now request the panelists to come in, and I will probably give an opening line in terms of what I am expecting from each of the panelists, and they can elaborate on those points. And then from an audience perspective, we would ask you all to come back with what are the kind of questions you have, so that we can take them in and see how as a country we can move forward on the decarbonization journey. To begin with, I would request Shri Padu Padmanabhan, who probably, like our MC said, he is a center of excellence in himself, and no one knows better in terms of the energy efficiency journey the country has taken in the last many decades. From your point of view, sir, if you could bring out what is the strategy that, more from a, not from a country point of view, but more from an industry and respective industries point of view, what is the strategy industry should adopt, and are there some tactical steps that each of them should take so that they can be enabled in this journey? If you could highlight this in about 5 to 7 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Krishna. Good afternoon to you all, and thank you for having me in this important session on decarbonization in Indian industry. COP26 last November at Glasgow, UK, raised a lot of global interest in energy transformation or energy transition with goals and targets for decarbonization and net zero. In the run up to and after COP26, several studies have been undertaken, and most of these studies have indicated that 30 to 50% of decarbonization goals and targets can be met by energy efficiency. Now, the question is, how do we do this in the industrial sector in India? And as you know, the industrial sector accounts for about 45% of the total energy demand in the country. So let me share a tiny tidbit of history. It was in 1970 that the first example of decarbonization in Indian industry took place. It took place in the textile industry in Mumbai. Of course, at that time, the term decarbonization was not known. Neither was the term net zero known, or for that matter, even climate change. But the textile industry substituted high carbon coal by lower carbon fuel oil, and there was a reason for doing so, and I'm not going to get into that reason, excepting to say that that step actually laid the foundation for energy efficiency in the country. And since then, energy efficiency has evolved. It started with energy substitution, followed by fuel efficiency, followed by energy conservation, and now with energy efficiency. Now we need to rejig energy efficiency. And there are three steps, one tactical and two strategic steps in order to advance energy efficiency so as to obtain decarbonization at scale. There are three pillars, as I said. The first pillar, which is tactical, is integrative energy efficiency design approaches to incorporate them in industrial design practices. Number two, which is strategic, is to reimagine energy efficiency and replace it with the term energy productivity. And the third is to introduce rather transformational technologies that reduce carbon and or carbon emissions. What is regenerative energy efficiency design and what does it do? Now, current energy efficiency efforts follow a linear path in Indian industry. Can we instead follow an integrative energy efficiency design which can save you an additional 25 to 30% more energy with existing technologies, existing equipment, existing processes? The question to ask is, have we achieved full potential of energy efficiency interventions in industry? Basically, can we save more than what one has designed the system for? Besides OPEX, can we save CAPEX? Now, currently, energy efficiency projects are schemes around standalone systems such as insulation or waste heat recovery, or efficient boilers or efficient furnaces, efficient motors, efficient lighting, and so on. These are all standalone systems. That's the operative word. They're not inclusive. They do not consider the upstream and downstream impacts of energy efficiency measures. We save energy until we reach a cost effectiveness limit. We reach a cost effectiveness limit when the marginal cost of energy is greater than the incremental value of the saved energy. Then we stop because it's not cost effective for us to save more. Now, can we tunnel through this barrier and save an additional 25 to 30% energy, OPEX and CAPEX, and achieve it at a lower marginal cost of incremental savings? There are several examples, and let me give you a very quick example of insulation. We all know about insulation, the minimum economic thickness of insulation, based on the least cost to save that additional unit of energy. Now, if one were to look downstream of the insulation system, would have saved heat, you would have saved steam, and you, in sense, should have a smaller size boiler. So if you have a smaller size boiler, you would have certainly savings in the capital cost of the boiler, savings in the burner systems, saving in the piping systems, and so on and so forth. That's a very, very simple example. There are examples of pumps and pipes. If you go to an industry or go to a building, go to the basement of the building, you'll find big pumps, small pipes. Now, the design of the pipe, if it is of a very small diameter, and we know that friction losses increase as the square of the diameter, and head losses increase as the fifth power of the diameter. And if you combine both these equations, which are the Darcy equations, then you will have what is known as big pumps, small pipes. And big pumps, small pipes are inefficient. You should have small pumps, big pipes, and that's where you bring in capex and opex savings. And there are many examples in insulation, rather in lighting, and so on and so forth. Now, coming to the second pillar of mine, of reimagining energy efficiency, which is more of a strategic kind of an approach. Can we reimagine energy efficiency differently? Currently, we ask the question, how is energy efficiency in an industry? That's the question top management asks the boiler room engineers. How are we doing on energy efficiency? And the answer is simple and straightforward. We do energy audits, we identify energy conservation measures, we prioritize these measures, and we implement the cost-effective measures. End of story. Now, if you were to change that question, instead of asking how is energy used, you ask the question, what is the energy used for? And the moment you ask that question, the answer will be revealing and fascinating, because you'll embrace a new concept, the energy productivity concept, which is actually the inverse of energy intensity, which would be based on the principle of maximizing economic value of energy to your industry. So energy productivity puts energy at the center of strategic planning in the industry. It is a policy narrative that is broader than energy efficiency. Why is that so? Energy efficiency is a boiler room subject connected with saving energy and improving the bottom line through measures such as insulation, waste heat recovery, and so on and so forth. Energy productivity is a boardroom subject and is concerned with improving the top line through steps such as value addition, diversification, modernization, restructuring, and so on. So at the country level, it is defined as the GDP of the country divided by the total energy consumed. At the company level, it is defined as the revenues of the company divided by the total energy. But it carries more strategic and potent importance. Now, there are many examples where energy productivity approach can lead to more optimal energy use per unit of value added. For examples in this aluminum industry, cement, paper, and so on. Do we manufacture bauxite, or do we go all the way and manufacture airline fuselages? Do we manufacture mild steel, or do we go all the way and manufacture precision tools? And the extra energy used to manufacture the value added item is very, very incremental, but the productivity gains are very, very high. So a productivity strategy would actually take energy efficiency to the next level. In other words, energy efficiency, which is a boiler room subject, needs to move to the boardroom as energy productivity. So, moving energy efficiency from the boiler room to the boardroom is the strategic challenge of Indian industry, and decarbonization would be a result of that effort. The
Sir,
third pillar is
if you could
industrial.
sum this up, the third point a little fast, sir.
Okay. In
Yeah.
fact, why did I do one thing even better? I would kind of rest the third point because it's. I'm sure my colleagues in the cement industry would talk about transformational technologies and so on and so forth. And mine is just really on transformational technology. But to answer your question, the tactical approach would be integrative energy designs. The strategic approach would be energy productivity. I'll rest my case here, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Sure, sir. Thank you. I think you brought out you brought out very well that energy efficiency today is not something that we are thinking today. It is something that has taken a journey of about 50 years through various nomenclatures and the way it has evolved. And today we need to look beyond energy efficiency and look at it from a productivity point of view. How it needs to move from a boiler room to a boardroom discussion. I think very well you brought out. You also brought out the fact of how skill and capacity play a very important role in the design thinking that comes into play. We will come back to you for some questions, sir. But before we come there, may I now request Mr. Kiran Ananth from CII GBC. And Kiran, if you could highlight, I mean, I know you have recently done a study on hard to abate sectors, on what it needs for these hard to abate sectors who have done some remarkable work through the PAT scheme. And if they have to move towards a decarbonization journey moving forward, especially in this decade, what does it take? If you could highlight some of that.
Sure. Thanks, Krishna, and good afternoon to all the participants. I have a few slides. I'll just put them up right now.
And request if you
Uh,
could keep it in 7 minutes.
yes, Krishna, I will. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Thank you. So this is a study which CII and Danfoss recently took up just before the COP. The study outcomes were ready and released just a few days before the historic COP announcement. The objective was to look at what kind of opportunities existed for decarbonization in the industrial sector. The study looked at a few key aspects. One was to look at an analysis that were done. In the last few months, there were several reports that looked at what could be the India's target. There were talks on net zero by 2050, net zero by 2060, but finally, when the announcement came of net zero by 2070, with of course the five key levers for a short-term target, this was extremely vital to look at what each of these analyses looked at. When is the country as a whole and the industrial sector looking at peaking and further plateauing, and then the decarbonization journey. And in pursuit to this, we looked at what is the impact of corporate action in India today. We have several corporates who have taken up ambitious targets in terms of their own net zero journey. We looked at what is the impact of all of them, how much is done, and how much more is to be done, and primarily looked at these five sectors being cement, iron and steel, pulp and paper, chemicals, and in chemicals restricting to ethylene, soda ash, and carbon black, more of the energy intensive ones, and the textile sector. And these five sectors, in a nutshell, was covering roughly about 45% of industrial carbon emissions. We looked at emission scenarios until 2040 and looked at business as usual and a deep decarbonization scenarios. Business as usual because all these sectors are growing, and we will look at it in terms of how these sectors are growing. But when all the sectors are growing, the new capacities which are coming in are certainly more efficient than the older ones, and therefore the intensity numbers have been on a reducing trend as the capacities went up. But when we are looking at a much more deeper decarbonization scenarios that are required in terms of achieving it, what are the levers available, and what could the industry do in terms of looking at it? Of course, this also looked at the key impact technologies for decarbonization and the policy interventions that were required. So, in the next 5 to 6 slides, I'll try to summarize the study just to put forth where we were and what happens next. The key finding of this was, of course, as Padu just now mentioned, efficiency still continues to be a dominant lever as far as industrial decarbonization is concerned. Larger corporates have taken up voluntary actions. These voluntary actions can result in good reduction. It's about nearly 2% of the emissions, which the voluntary actions of a few select 50 corporates have taken up could result in, but much, much more is required when we are looking at a larger industrial decarbonization scenarios. The estimated reduction in a business as usual scenario was about 15%, because as the new capacities come, as the programs like PAT for these hard to abate sectors continue to lay focus on continual efficiency improvements, the benefit that we see between now and 2040 is around 15.5%. But but there are opportunities that industries could look at to achieve a deep decarbonization scenario, which could take them closer to a 30% decarbonization over the next 18 to 20 years. And that is what is required in terms of helping both the industrial sectors as well as the nation at large pursue its decarbonization journey. And as I said, energy efficiency still continues to play a major role. Nearly 44% of the BAU impact comes only from the energy efficiency intervention. So, out of all the analysis that were done, this, in a nutshell, I would say a summary of what was looked at for the cement sector. From the current levels of emissions, the emissions were bound to increase. The per capita consumption of cement was around 235, 240 kilograms, but the world average was nearly double. It was more than about 520. So what we looked at was, even if you are looking at with the increasing infrastructure needs, with the increasing demand for the primary building materials like the cement and steel growing, the sector is bound to increase. The capacities from the current levels of about 300, 320 million tons of clinker is expected to cross 500 by 2040. And with these increased production levels, the emissions are increasing. But the BAU scenario is promising, and this sector promises nearly about 13% of reduction from its current levels of intensity, even in a BAU kind of a growth. And this predominantly comes from technologies such as energy efficiency, thermal efficiency, use of alternate fuels, looking at circularity and material efficiency. But there are opportunities for the sector to look at a little deeper, and from 13% to look at nearly about 30% of intensity reduction between now and 2040. There are some of the opportunities available which can certainly help the sector move forward in a deep decarbonized scenario. Chemicals is another sector that we looked at. Again, the emissions are increasing, one of the faster growing sectors compared to the rest, particularly because of the
Kiran,
increasing.
about 2 minutes. If you could do it in
Yes,
about 2 minutes. Yeah.
yes, Krishna. Thanks. So this sector is again looking at a poised growth, but there are opportunities available in terms of reduction, and the same lies good for steel. For example, the per capita consumption of steel today is about 75 kilograms, while the global average was about three times more, about 225 kilograms, giving a lot more opportunity for the sector. It grows, but there is a potential for decarbonization as well. So, in a nutshell, the summary of all these five sectors we looked at, the BAU scenario was taking it good. It was about 15.5% reduction, but the decarbonization scenarios based on the existing technologies, based on the existing know-how, and a far wider and a quicker implementation can take the industrial sector close to about 30% decarbonization. So this, in a nutshell, was a summary of all the individual sectors in terms of what potential they offer. While the paper sector, because of the nature of its raw material and the dependence on forestry, has a larger potential to decarbonize. But by and large, all the other sectors together, we are looking at anywhere between 25 to 30% of a deep decarbonization scenario possible with deeper interventions. Of course, Padu spoke about the tactical and the strategic steps. These are required, but we also try to look at how each of these segments in the industry could take it forward. What could the best performers be looking at? What could be the industry leaders looking at? What kind of innovative, high impact, or futuristic technologies that can come in? Much was dwelt in this publication. And also to look at what interventions were required on each one of them, be it in terms of energy efficiency or increased electrification and use of clean energy, on circularity and material conservation, on cleaner fuels, and on carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So I just conclude to say that yeah, industrial decarbonization seems to be an extremely important step in terms of helping the nation achieve its targets. And out of that industrial decarbonization levers, energy efficiency with nearly a 40% impact seems to be the way forward for the industry to look at least in the next 1 to 2 decades. With that, I stop, Krishna, and hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kiran. Thank you for showcasing that between a BAU scenario to a deep decarbonization scenario, you can almost double the amount of carbon reductions that can come in. And I think you also very on a very high level you brought out some ways to do it. And I see that a lot of these seem to be alternative technologies that you are talking of, be it waste heat recovery or some of the new energy storage and those kind of aspects that are there. And very interesting to know this. At least I have got one request asking where can they find this study. So probably you can. We will see how you can probably work with the organizers to see you can reach out to this. There are some more questions that are there, but we will come back to you in understanding exactly what and how these new technologies can be done. Do we have some good examples? I think those are some of the questions that are there. But before we go there, maybe I will now request Mr. Raju Goyal from UltraTech Cement. We do know even from Kiran's study that he has just presented that the cement sector has done some remarkable work, and they stand tall when it comes to the work that they have done in energy efficiency, not just in India but globally. They are recognized as being done very well. UltraTech in itself has done some very good work in this space. So, Mr. Goyal, if you could highlight what is it that you see as, I mean, of course, we know UltraTech has done some remarkable work. If you could highlight on why is it that you do this, and how do you see this could enable the sector to move towards a decarbonization journey, and how could we work with you, all of you, in this journey?
Thank you, Mr. Krishna. And it is my great pleasure to have the esteemed panel here and participating in this event. And I also say the thanks to the Kiran who has made my job very easy to explain, to say that. So coming back to the cement industry, I think as everybody knows that cement industry is the total about 7 to 8% globally CO2 contribution into the global emission on that side. So cement industry already has a seen as a quite a number of quite of a contributor to this CO2 or carbonization journey on that side. But same time we also say that cement industry also being recognized as a hard to abate. When we say the hard to abate, which is roughly about 70% emission, which is coming from the raw material, which is the essential part of the whole process, and process emissions are coming out from the materials, and 30% roughly we say that coming out of the fuels. So we have the very big challenge in front of us to make sure that our industry is taking all the initiatives and all the technologies available and promote the technologies which can help us to decarbonize our industry. So the next slide, please. Just to click all the slides, click this all. So just I'll tell you one thing, because as although we say that cement industry is very hard to abate, but what we are saying, as Mr. Krishna mentioned, that we should walk the talk. So I'm going to show the few things what we have done, achieved so far. We can see that in the last, say about 15 years, we have reduced the 22% of our carbon footprint in our operation here. So we are moving ahead with the right direction, and we are taking the step which is resulting in our journey. So currently we say that we have about 500, almost 600 kg of CO2 per ton of cementitious material, and we have water positivity as well as the plastic positivity, because this is the part of the we have taken as our whole ambition to our decarbonization study. And what next? So what we have committed, we are committed our 460 kg per CO2 per ton of cementitious material, and out of that I can tell you that we have reset our goals, we reset our dial, and we say that 27%, based on the 2017, we will further reduce in the next 4 or 5 years. And I'm very happy to say that in the last 1.5 years or 2 years, 6% of 27 has been already achieved. So significantly initiatives, drives, technologies we are using to reduce our carbon footprints. How we have whole things have been organized, what need to be done. We have put up a 5-pillar strategy which is called the operations, energy, material, and product and innovation. This fits in our whole operation, covers the wide area from end-to-end product chain. So let's talk about the operations. So operations, we are using a lot of digitalization, AI and ML technologies to reduce our operations inefficiencies, reducing the carbon footprints, and reducing the heat consumption and the power consumptions. Can say that UltraTech currently is having about 5 to 6% lower than the national average heat consumption point of view. So we are working on that side. Another lever, we have the clinker factor, where we use the less clinker, which is the high CO2 content, to reduce our CO2 footprint on that side. To energy side, we are using about roughly, and some of the plants we have gone to the 28, 27% of replacement of the traditional fuel, which is the coal or pet coke, by using the waste materials. And so this is the initiative we have taken there. And we also working on the taking the road transport to the mechanical transport systems. For example, limestone or raw materials which are driven by the trucks and things. We are using the belt conveyors or any other mechanical techniques to transport the material. So we are focusing on the technology adoptions. We are focusing on the upgradation and digitalization and optimization of our processes. Then we talk about the energy side, as we have listened to the Mr. Kiran. So we say that we have roughly about almost about 120 megawatt coming out from the water waste heat recovery system. Our plan is to go to the 300 megawatt in the next 2 years' time. And we also have the renewable energy. So currently we have about 3 to 4% of our product energy mix is coming from the solar and other renewable energies, which we are targeting to the 10%. So our target is that by 2024, our 34% of the total energy requirement, as everybody knows that cement industry is a very much energy requirement or energy demand is very high, which is also mentioned by the Mr. Padu also in that things. So we are very cautious about that, how we use it energy. And this the things, Mr. Padu, we are using it. Why we are using energy? That is our concept, not to just only save the energy only. How the demand can be also reduced on that side. Then we talk about the material side. So material side, circular economy, which was touched by some of the
Mr.
panels.
Mr. Raju, if you could conclude in about 2 minutes. Yeah.
I will do that, sir. I will do that. So towards the material side, so we are using roughly about 30 million ton of the material which is used or produced, a byproduct is coming out, which is used in the cement manufacturing or replacement of the multiple materials, and working on the new material and new technology or new science behind material science to provide the material with the low carbon product. Coming back to the product, so our product, what we say that the cement is had the lowest possible is about 350 kg CO2 per ton of cement we are producing, which is the very lowest in the industry point of view. And concrete also we are focusing, because ultimately cement has to go to the concrete, which is in the range of 200 to 300 kg CO2 per ton of per cubic meter of concrete. And we are working on the number of technologies which can reduce the further our footprint on the our CO2 reduction or decarbonization of the industry. And the innovation side, we are developing a lot of new technologies. We are piloting, we are focusing on that, evaluating. We have a lot of explorations going on, a lot of partnership is going on with the startups, and a lot of research and development. As you know that UltraTech has a very good research center in our operations, which we are using towards our material technology development as well as process development. So this will be our strategy to develop the whole decarbonization strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raju. I think while there is a lot of good work that UltraTech has done in this space, which is I think very well known, one key takeaway I see that is that this is a decision that is taken at the board level, which is also something I think which is also coming out when Mr. Padu addressed us as to how do we move away from a boiler room discussion to a boardroom discussion, and when the direction setting is done at a boardroom level, a lot of things can happen. I think that's something that is very clearly coming out in your direction that you are saying. And that kind of sets the stage very well for Mr. Ponnuswami, sir. I actually waited to bring him in towards the end because he comes with immense experience. He is a first generation entrepreneur. He has set up an industry and he has really nurtured and grown it. He has also been the state chairman of CII Tamil Nadu and has seen especially the MSME space at a very close angle. And MSMEs kind of form the backbone of the country, sir, which we know, and they are not only huge employment generators, but even in this decarbonization journey that we are speaking, they kind of form the most important fulcrum for us. So, with your that kind of an experience, sir, if you could throw some light on basis your own experience, your own journey in the chemical industry, and having seen MSMEs across, how do you see that they working in this journey? What are the challenges you see for them, and how do you see that we can together work towards overcoming them?
Thank you, Mr. Krishna. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I thank you for giving this opportunity. Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. See, chemical industry is one of the largest in India. It is in the world. It is one of the largest hubs, producing by 80,000 commercial chemicals. In fact, if we see during the pandemic, metals and chemicals are the largest investment key. And for your information, around 6 lakh crore rupees investment on the pipeline. Already the projects are on. In other than next 4 years, 6 lakh crore investment going to come. Even South, I am expecting about 2 lakh crore. So that type of investment coming. The reason behind it is government of India, they want to know India become net importer, net exporter of chemicals. About 5 years back, the net import was around 3 lakh crore from 3,000 crore from 2001. Now, this year, we may end up with almost reducing about one third, about 1 lakh crore. That is the development is stable, so huge investment coming. It is going at 13-14%. It's going at 13-14%. But the emission, I think it's one of the next electricity sector, chemical sector, the huge emissions. I think that we have to understand. And most of the 80% energy requirement of chemicals are from fossil fuels. I think that is a lot of things can be done. I think the experts are there. CIA can work, Mr. Padu can work, Mr. Raju can share his experience to chemical industry. It's one of the very important industry. So for example, steam cracker, it consumes almost 1 ton of CO2 for 1 ton of energy. And also ammonia plant consumes almost 9 ton of CO2 for 1 ton of production of hydrogen. This is what happening. But what the industry is doing is, see, chemicals, specialty chemicals, even our own experience, we are supplying to textile industry. We are going and speaking to them. If your bath time is 8 hours, can we reduce to 2 hours? Can you change your chemical this dyeing process with different chemicals? Probably you can do it. And also we are telling whether water consumption in your process can be reduced to 1/3. We are talking. We are developing. Our R&D is developing. Many people are doing that. I think that type so that water conservation is there, and also time up. How much energy is being used. So that also we are working something like that. And also, this textile salt free. Salt is one of the most solid waste it's coming. So how this can be done? And also we see for color removal, this textile processing, even paper, what they do, they use fluorescent light. Slides, and it take lot of slides and disposal of the slides. Our friend Raju Goyal in Tirupur, in where most of the textile process, they take cement industry, collect 6,000 and just take the slides. So it is happening like that. So these are the things. We are just polymer chemical, there will not be much sludge. It's very, very negligible. So something like that we are working. Therefore, I like to say probably some of the industries working, chemical industry, they are taking waste like magnesium, but magnesia and using spent sulfuric acid, reacting, manufacturing magnesium sulfate, and also they are all covering completely. But why I am telling, large, medium scale industry, they are able to understand this saving energy efficient. But there is a cluster of the same magnesium sulfate in Metu. They don't use it. They use direct heating, biomass direct heating. They are doing no boiler, nothing. Lots of energy is wasted. So can we go with the government, work with the environment ministry, go also with the R&D Institute, how we can make them maybe a cluster formation. I think CA can help. So that how that can be bought. Maybe one boiler can be 12 cluster they can supply. Something like that, we can do that. I think this is a small example I told. And also, see, over a period of time, it has taken uh, this chloralkali industries. They always get byproduct hydrogen. So what they do, they used to burn it out, or they used to supply to this oil processing and all. Now almost all the chloralkali plants they put hydrogen peroxide, because hydrogen peroxide they were generating from naphtha, natural gas, this hydrogen and making hydrogen peroxide. So like that, I think over a period of time things are happening, good things are happening. As for MSMEs, I think I spoke to today about 5, 6 MSME customers I spoke. The medium scale, they are already doing. They are putting the rooftop solar, they are having windmills, they are doing it. One on investment side, and also it's cost effective, they are doing it. And also they are trying to automate the process, all these things they are doing. They have time and money also to do that. But MSMEs, I think it is a problem. So how we can take them together? I think the journey without MSME will not benefit the country. That is my feeling. Supplier,
Sir,
yeah,
sir, there are a lot of questions coming in. If you could sum up in about 1 to 2 minutes, then
no
we can
problem,
take
no
the
problem,
question.
no problem. See, this can we work with MSMEs? How to create interest? Can we go to the government and talk to them? Can this be done by green parts? By budget they announced some green parts. Can MSME specific green parts can be generated and funded for these projects? I think this we can think it. I think there is one more thing I want to tell. Government India, they have brought National Single Window Portal. CA has represented to include grid connection in the National Single Window Portal. Anybody making solar and windmill, the grid connection in permission for distribution, power distribution, everything is coming. Now they're including. So all this can be get benefit. And I think we can work with ease of doing business. Wherever is there any permission required, we can put national single window. It is integrated the state single window system. And this all my points, Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I think it's important to take these people in this journey, especially the MSMEs, like you brought out. They are still using very old technologies, and how can you kind of expose them to these new technologies that are available? A lot of this is also, I think, what Mr. Padu also brought out in the beginning is when he brought out design thinking at a medium level, but I think also at an MSME, SME level, they just need to know that there are other options available to them which probably are cheaper than what they are using today. It is just that exposure is not available. It is very important. While we have a lot of questions, but I think we just have about 12 minutes. So from all of this, I will kind of highlight these into two questions, but I will take them one after the another. And I would request each of you to spend probably about a minute in answering this question. From whatever we have seen here in this discussion, I think the idea of decarbonization and having a net zero strategy at a corporate level or at an industry level seems to be something that we would like to consider as industries or as individual companies. And we have seen examples of industries doing well when they have taken this discussion at a boardroom level. But if you could, in 1 minute, say that what is it that could enable this discussion to move to a boardroom level? And is there something from a policy level that could enable this discussion? And maybe we can go in the same round like what we did, starting with you, Padu, sir, in about 60 seconds.
See, at a policy level and at a national level, the same question can be answered a little differently. See, the important point here is that we need to make uh, decarbonization and energy productivity as a central strategy. So, at the national level, what it really means is that Indian industry per se actually has what is known as has already begun to decouple energy consumption with energy with manufacture. There's a certain amount of decoupling taking place because energy productivity has improved in Indian industry from 2000 from 1990 to 2015, there was a 75% improvement in energy productivity. And the reason is that there was modernization of Indian industry and so on and so forth. But the point here is that the decoupling which has taken place in Japan and in and Germany, other OECD countries, has been an absolute decoupling. That is, for every unit of GNP increase, there has been a reduction in energy consumption. India also has decoupled, but it has been relative. That is, for every unit of GNP increase, there has been an increase in energy consumption, but the rate of increase of energy consumption is reduced, which is good. But relative decoupling will not take you over the cliff as far as decarbonization is concerned. We have to move from relative decoupling to absolute decoupling. And that's where the challenge lies. And the challenge lies at the boardroom level of Indian industry to now begin to move from looking at energy productivity as the strategy rather than looking at boiler room energy efficiency, which has played its role, important, it has delivered, and maybe can deliver more. And we need integrative energy designs, etc., to deliver more. But then the real delivery of decarbonization will take place when Indian industry moves and adopts energy productivity, which is the inverse of energy intensity, as its strategy to move forward. And that the signal has to come from policy. And as I said, at the national level, we have to move from absolute decoupling to relative decoupling. And to get into relative decoupling and move it into absolute decoupling, Indian industry has to rise to the challenge.
Thank you, sir. Kiran?
Very quickly, I mean, fully agree with Padu, just adding a couple of more points. One is decarbonization today. I mean, while energy efficiency has been looked at for a long time, today decarbonization is not something which is good to do for most of the corporates today. It is something which is must do not only from their own internal stakeholders perspective, but also from the policy perspective, from the investors, and from their own cost benefits. And there are multiple ways of looking at it. It is not only the efficiency part, but also in terms of the materiality, the circularity, the kind of the choices of materials, the choices of products, the choices of services that companies can look at in their larger avenues for looking at decarbonization. I'm sure it definitely will find a way in the boardroom pretty soon.
Okay. Mr. Raju?
Yeah, thanks, Krishna. I think my before colleagues already covered that, but I will try to explain the 2 points which we are taking as a what you call the boardroom responsibility or boardroom concept on that. So we have already inbuilt in every decision making, we have called the internal carbon pricing. It means every decision we take it, we already built in the carbon emission prices and things in our all the decision making. Second, we have taken the science-based targets, which is the very much calculated, very much scientifically what can be done on that side. And secondly, we also partnership with the technology providers or technology institutions for the hardcore, what you call the process, which is the 70% of the CO2, how we can use the different technologies, non-conventional practices to reduce our CO2 footprints. That will be about 3 strategies we are doing.
Excellent, Mr. Raju. I think the carbon pricing and the science-based target initiative is something that kind of is playing its narrative, if you say, very well in Europe, where carbon pricing is kind of determining the way companies grow. Ponnuswami, sir?
Yes. See, if you are in export business, particularly MSMEs, see companies like Decathlon, Marks and Spencer, H&M, these people are already they have started insisting what is the decarbonization, how can you switch from this fossil fuel to this biomass. They are insisting, so it will make the owners to think about that. If they want regular business, I think this one. We also did some green certification in Tirupur cluster. Like that, they are all very happy that they are using. I think Mr. Ravichandran name was Chairman CA Tamil Nadu initiated. It was very good. In fact, when I spoke to some district collector, I told them, and then taking over the job, I told, can you brand your district as a green district? How can you work? That will be the information you will get. I think these are the things we should take. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you all brought out very well. Srishti, could you put the concluding slide where some of these things as a way forward have been put together in terms of multiple aspects where I think you talked about it in a different way, Padu, where you talked about decoupling. I think they are talking of it from a sector integration perspective, but I think all of it, what we have said is encapsulated there. But if I have to kind of sum it up, one angle that is coming in is that policy is going to play a very important role, be it at a central level where it is important to take note of whether they want to move the notch up from an energy efficiency to an energy productivity kind of an angle. And if India as a country needs to have an energy productivity as a target. And I also see another signal coming in from what Mr. Ponnuswami said, that it needs to also decentralize and it needs to go down to a district level, and each district needs to have its own green strategy and how will they become green. I think that's kind of very important, and we do see that there is a ranking that is given to states in terms of their energy efficiency, but probably this will also come in automatically in a direction where we already see some countries like Burma saying that we don't want industries to come and invest in our country which are not environment friendly. So probably that's a direction that we will also see from a district's point of view, where districts will determine how green they want to be. And two aspects that I think Kiran and Raju brought out is that the benefits definitely will make this a boardroom discussion, which is kind of coming out very well. And we are already seeing this playing out in Europe, where carbon pricing is increasingly playing a very vital role in how companies do business. But carbon pricing as a mechanism will probably play out differently in different regions. It will not be the same as what it will happen in Europe. It will be the same in US to what it will happen in a country like India. But carbon pricing, we definitely see is going to come in at some point in time, and that kind of puts the ball back in the decarbonization journey, because companies which take that step in that direction of being decarbonized, putting a carbon pricing in their products, will have an edge in terms of the market, because today we are seeing consumers kind of determining and asking for those kind of products. So it kind of helps in, and we are almost at the fag end of the panel discussion, sir. It has been a very interesting and enriching discussion for all of us. If each of you could just give one statement, sir, as to an action point that we could conclude this with, and then we could then ask Srishti to take over.
Can I begin? I'll make
Yes.
two sentences. One
Yeah.
is something we have repeated several times, but I mentioned it about 15 years back, and it's coming to the fore today. Indian industry must move energy efficiency from the boiler room to the boardroom. That's one. And number two is Indian industry needs to adopt integrative energy efficiency principles over current linear energy efficiency design methods. These are the two. One is strategic and another is tactical.
Thank you, sir. Ponnuswami, sir. Yeah, Kiran, go ahead.
No, go. It's fine.
I have 2 points. Creating our awareness to MSME on the benefits, cost benefit as well, and also how we can take them as a part of this business. Then completely break what are the hindrance government side in the approvals on these things. I think we will make it. That is very important, because you apply a new innovative method, the pollution fellow will say, no, this is not allowed. So how this can be represented properly, I think that we can do through this ease of doing business committee or energy committee, CIA, and Kiran can always help. I think these two, I think, is very important. We
Thank you, sir.
completely break this system.
Kiran?
Sure. I mean, decarbonization today is more important than ever. Industrial decarbonization certainly helps achieve national targets. While we've been discussing about energy efficiency for so many years, it's surprising to know that this study still says that another 40% or plus opportunity for decarbonization comes from efficiency alone, which means it is here to stay, here to go longer, and certainly not only makes decarbonization possible, but also decarbonization possible with its own commercial benefits for the organizations pursuing it.
Mr. Raju?
Yeah, thanks. I think our speakers covered a lot. So I will talk about on behalf of from the lens of the cement industry. I think energy efficiency and energy consumption reduction. I think the cement industry is, I will say that world best. I can compare that. I think Kiran can substitute that more my statement. So I think we have achieved what the best we can achieve in the what this scope is there, but effort versus the gain might be we have to compare that one. And second point, I would say that the technologies and the things what we are knowing currently, how to accelerate the use of them. For example, the waste recovery system. It's almost 20 years old technology we are talking about, right? Every known the industry. But if you rightly said that cement industry is about 1,500 megawatt potential, but right now we only 300 or 400 only. How to leverage on the known technologies or known awareness to accelerate the use of them while we are waiting for the innovative technologies such as the carbon CCU, CCS, or the hydrogen technologies, or some kind of other things which is coming up. While waiting for that, maximize the or take the leverage the existing technologies what we have. That would be my takeaway on that.
Thank you, Mr. Raju. I think very, very important points, and thank you all for being there. And I think we are not on time. Srishti, over to you to conclude the session.
Thank you for fine moderation. You kept us on a tight leash and kept us within the number.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would like to thank everyone for joining in time and concluding the session in time, and also providing some great one-liners and quote, which will act as an action item for all of us. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.